Welcome to this episode of Unstoppable Journeys. My name is Ryan Kubik, founder and personal CFO of MRG Wealth, and I'd like to introduce you to a special guest we have today, Alex Sarian, President and CEO of Arts Common. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I appreciate you taking the time to share with us all about Arts Common today. So normally in these chats, we jump right into kind of problem and solutions to share with the audience. But let's take a step back for a second and talk about what is Arts Common?
So Arts Commons, I love that you asked that question because I feel like it's part of the evolution of who we're trying to be as a city. But Arts Commons is a performing arts center based in downtown Calgary. It's a massive 560,000 square foot facility. It's the largest in Western Canada, the third largest in Canada, and one of the largest in North America. We are home to 2,000 cultural events per year, and we are about to turn 40 years old. And the reason I share that is because we are embarking right now, we're about to put shovels in the ground in the next few months, on the largest cultural infrastructure project in Canadian history.
In history?
In history.
Amazing.
$660 million project in the heart of Calgary's downtown. And so much of that has to do with the evolution of who we have become as an organization, but also I think around Calgary and who we're trying to become as a city.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
Now, is Arts Commons just one organization, one piece, or is there different components to Arts Commons?
No, so we are an ecosystem. I love describing it as an ecosystem, and we are stewards of that ecosystem. We are home to 6 resident organizations. So when people think about the Calgary Philharmonic Orchestra, or they think about, Theatre Calgary and the annual production of Christmas Carol, or the Jack Singer Concert Hall, we are home to all of those venues and organizations, all of whom operate independently, right? So as stewards of this ecosystem, our job is quite literally to be in constant communication with community and trying to serve organizations and supporting their success as defined by them. So really, we are a conduit for how artists and arts organizations interface with the average Calgarian.
That is so exciting.
Yeah.
Such a wide scope.
Yeah, it's huge.
Scene.
And ironically, I moved here from New York City, where I spent a lot of years at Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts, and people for some reason understand Lincoln Center because of its international reputation. But Arts Commons was modeled after Lincoln Center from a governance perspective. So as people understand and wrap their brains around all the things that Lincoln Center means to New York, it's no different than all the things that Arts Commons could potentially mean to Calgary.
And what are some of those things? Like, what are some of the things that Arts Commons could mean to Calgary, or currently mean to Calgary?
Well, I talked some about the history of it. We opened in 1985, leading up to the '88 Olympics, and we haven't changed much. So imagine a 560. I think it's big now. We're about to push 1.7 million. If I think we're big now, I can only imagine myself in 1985 opening a venue of this size. When the population of Calgary was 600,000 people roughly, and we were built to welcome 50% of that population every year. Today we welcome well over 750,000 people, so we've really maximized the usage of that facility. But what it did for us back in the 80s is it positioned us as a city that was worthy of being recognized for a variety of things. Certainly the Olympics put us on the map, and this was no different. Stampede puts us on the map. And I think this was Calgary's way, as we were preparing to sort of introduce ourselves to the world, this was Calgary's way of saying, we are a world-class city. We are a destination. It's not just about, the mountains and nature. We do have world-class arts organizations and arts venues. We've delivered on that promise, and which is why we're doubling down on it now and trying to carve out a future for the next 40 years.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
And what type of problem does Arts Commons or yourself aim to solve with society, with people, or with other?
I think the value of the arts has always been important, right? And I think post-pandemic, we are talking about the social impact of coming together around cultural experiences. We've learned a lot in terms of, spending so many years isolated from one another during the pandemic. Coming together around a cultural experience is literally building social skills, and when it comes to young people in particular, there's something called emotional referencing that a lot of mental health practitioners talk about, and they reflect on the pandemic and they say to me, I think we've all consumed more arts and culture and entertainment, during the pandemic. I know I've binge watched hours of Netflix, but what mental health practitioners are saying now in reflection, in hindsight, is that when you consume entertainment in a vacuum or with people that might think like you are essentially reinforcing certain biases that we might have. And emotional referencing is really activated when, imagine if you and I had never met each other and we were sitting in, and we were watching a play at Arts Commons or anywhere. And imagine that an actor on stage makes a joke and you laugh at that joke, but I don't. All of a sudden, my brain is trying to figure out, why is Ryan laughing and not me? And that's the act of emotional referencing. And we start comparing our emotional responses to something. And that is what people and scientists think is what leads to the development of empathy. And so this idea of emotional referencing around a cultural experience allows us to build empathy, allows us to build community, and we wouldn't have known that pre-pandemic. And so I think as we try to figure out what it means to build community again post-pandemic, and I think times are divisive no matter where you come from and where you live, the act of finding and building space together and building community is so important. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is, we are looking at this project as a city building project for Calgary, much like we did 40 years ago in the 80s. And as we think about the growth that Calgary is going through, and we were talking about the population growth and the amenities and the infrastructure, for people to look at Calgary and say, I might want to move to Calgary because it has access to nature and low cost of living and high quality of life. Families are looking for, is there good education? Is there good public transport? Is there good access to housing? Is there arts and culture? I've had corporate CEOs come to me and say, we're doubling down on our bet on Calgary. We're going to bring in thousands of employees, but they're going to want to know that we have sports teams, and they're going to want to know that we have parks, and they want to know that we have access to arts and culture. And so to us, that is contributing to how Calgary is perceived, certainly by people that might want to come visit or move here, but I think more importantly by people that live here currently. How do we deliver on that promise to Calgary? And so there's so many ways of trying to figure out who it is we're trying to become. And the challenge, you put it, the problem that I see is, and there are a couple, but one of them is, how do we manifest our value proposition? How do we communicate to people that we are important, not because we say we're important, but because we are providing those experiences for others, and inviting them into our house and saying, this is a place for you to have your experience. And that's a shift in the arts world, because I think many people love the arts, love entertainment, but they feel like once I go inside, all bets are off and I don't feel comfortable and it's not up to me. And we are trying desperately as a sector to get rid of that and to say to folks, you celebrate culture as defined by you, and it doesn't matter what your background is or upbringing is, but every community, every family celebrates a definition of culture. And I think historically, arts centers and arts organizations may not have reflected that definition of culture. And we have a responsibility now to say we are a home, we are a destination where culture can be celebrated, not as defined by us, but as defined by you. And so entering into that civic dialogue is, to me, what is the challenge ahead of us right now.
I love how you're saying defined by the person.
Yeah.
Because everyone perceives an act or an object or a conversation differently. And
Yeah.
I love your analogy you used about one person laughing, one not,
Yeah.
and then looking and be like, hey, did I miss a word or phrase, or are you just a little smarter than I am and witty? Like, there's always different perception when you're experiencing art and culture and really just daily life.
And how do we create a space in which it is safe enough to have that conversation? And I think the world is sometimes too eager to demonstrate the difference between people, and not oftentimes creates the space for us to reflect on that difference and celebrate that difference and find what we may actually have in common. And so to me, the arts, whether it is in the safety of an environment or whether it's in front of a work of art that might speak to us in a different way, we create this safety in which we can have those conversations, in which we can disagree in a civil way. And I don't know about you, but I can't think of a more urgent thing for us to figure out as a community than how to have conversation again.
Absolutely. So powerful and so important on multiple levels.
Yeah.
I love that you also use safety and home and house.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people get nervous or afraid. They might not know as much as the other people around them, or is there a specific expectation of their behavior, what they dress or how they act or what they should say, and creating that safe space. Like I like how you said you're inviting someone into their home.
Yeah.
And
And
so they can experience their way.
And I'll say this, and I say this publicly, and sometimes I get in trouble for saying this. There is no right or wrong way to experience the arts. And I think arts organizations historically have banked on the prestige or have banked on the elitism of having this really amazing experience, and it's backfiring on us. And I think as an arts organization, certainly the size of Arts Commons, for us to say you can still experience excellence through the arts, but it's not up to me in terms of what you're going to enjoy. I actually want to learn from you and what you enjoy, because then it's my job and my responsibility to find ways of celebrating that within Arts Commons so that you can be excited about it and that you can share of yourself and your culture with others. To me, that's the role that we can play, and then certainly as we put shovels in the ground, that we're looking to build towards for the future.
I love that vision.
Thank
Very
you.
excited for you in Arts Commons.
Thank you.
And you're heavily involved in this, like in New York, your past experiences and bringing a lot of that learning and vision to Calgary. What's your story of why? Like, why do you do what you do? Why do you want to be the president and CEO of Arts Commons? Why do you want to, put so much blood, sweat, tears into this?
So I love people, right? I love people, and I love differences, and that to me leads into, if you love differences amongst people, then you're bound, like I love different cuisines and I love different cultures and I love traveling to different countries. And to me, there is a way through the arts where you can celebrate that without leaving the comfort of your living room or the comfort of your own city. And so I think to myself, if I can help build and nurture an arts community where different artists and arts organizations and audience members and communities can come together and celebrate the variety of perspectives that exist within a community, then not only are we building relationships between people, but we're also inadvertently sometimes even building the community and the identity of a city. And so certainly I've seen that happen in New York. And I'll be the first to say that what works in New York isn't necessarily going to work in Calgary. And one of my jobs that I had in New York was I consulted internationally. And I had the great privilege of traveling across the world. And that was a very humbling experience and a very educational experience, because I realized that what worked in New York wasn't going to work in Shanghai, or wasn't going to work in Madrid, and wasn't going to work in Buenos Aires. And so it really makes you appreciate the asking of questions rather than thinking that you are entitled to having the answer. And so when I started getting to know Calgary through the interview process and contemplating the move to Arts Commons, I was really excited about sort of the crossroads that Calgary seemed to be at. And now I'm talking 2019, 2020. And that excited me. And whether you consider that to be an identity crisis or an opportunity or an economic recession, that excited me because I feel like I could come to a city that was filled with generous, kind, wonderful people, and that if I could ask the right questions through the lens of Arts Commons and through the lens of arts and culture, and if I could surround myself with the right folks locally, then I feel like Arts Commons could help answer that question with and for Calgary. And we're doing it now, right? 4 years later, it's not like we're not out of an identity crisis, but certainly the economy seems to have turned around. We are one of the fastest growing cities in the country right now, and people desperately want to come here. And that's an incredible, like we were talking about, it's an incredible opportunity. It's an incredible responsibility. And unless we tackle it right, in the right way, it could potentially become a challenge. And so I think we have an opportunity to redefine who it is that we are as a city by listening and engaging in conversation with the people that want to come here, but also by celebrating the legacy of who we've been for so long. And so that's why I love this project, because we get to celebrate 40 years of a legacy that goes back to the '88 Olympics, but we also get to celebrate the moment and the moment now and who it is that we want to become.
Absolutely, and so many milestones and moments to celebrate throughout. Now, you said something really powerful around asking the right questions.
Yeah.
So what did you find are some of the more effective or powerful questions that you or Arts Commons have asked, the people or the population and others to help set the stage for this next journey?
So there are a couple of questions that, to me, I always ask no matter what room I walk into. The first one is, how can we be of service? There tends to be, and we were talking about this, people tend to feel uncomfortable walking into an art center or an arts organization or some arts experiences. Historically, it feels like, if you walk into a theater, it's like, oh, you're walking into my house.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to position ourselves not only as an arts and culture center, but as a civic center. And by saying we're a civic center, it actually changes the dynamic to say that we are in service to the city of Calgary. And so when I walk into conversations, whether it's with politicians, whether it's with business owners, whether it's with young families that are moving here, my first question is, how can we be in service to you? And because at the end of the day, that is what we want. We want people to share of themselves with us. And why spin our wheels when we can just ask the question? And so whether it's a young family that might have moved here from overseas saying, we need programming, we need artistic programming for our young kids, or we may not speak English very well yet, so dance is an art form that really resonates with us because we won't get lost in language. And so the more we can learn about how to serve community and the evolution of our community, then the more the job is on us to deliver on that promise. So how can we be of service is a big question that we ask, and I would encourage more arts organizations and frankly people in general to ask. And then the second question is, what are we uniquely positioned to do? We ask the question, how can we be in service? And sometimes we get answers around health and safety. Sometimes we get answers around that go beyond the scope of what we can do as an arts organization. And so to me, the follow-up question to that is, what are we uniquely positioned to do? Because I want us as an organization and as a community to stretch the definition of what the impact is around arts and culture, but we also need to be very mindful that we need to be partnering with other organizations in terms of how to create this sort of collective impact around serving community. We talk a lot, I spoke about emotional referencing. I wouldn't have known that had we not worked with mental health practitioners. And so how do we, if we are serving community and if we are serving Calgarians and if we are responding to those needs, how do we do it through the lens of our mission, but also how do we partner with others that might complement our work?
It's a great way to say, like, how can I help? How can I service?
Yeah.
Rather than tell someone how they should feel or do. Or
I can't think. I don't know. In your line of work, if you did that, you'd be out of a job.
It's the first question I ask people as well.
Yeah.
How can I help?
That's it.
Right.
It's not rocket science.
Yeah. But I agree with you. I think if more and more people ask that question, one, it is instantly, it's almost like a hug.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you're not here to sell me something or push me something, or if there is some tension, like there usually reduces tension, just kind of like when you get a hug from someone, you're like, thanks. Well, I do need some help. I might need to know directions on where the nearest grocery store is.
Yeah.
Or like, well, maybe I can
That
help you
makes my job easy. Yeah.
Well, maybe it is on dance programming for children, other things.
And I find that with so many sectors having been disrupted during the pandemic, trying to find our footing again is a hard enough process to go through. Why not just ask the question?
Yeah.
Why not redefine our value proposition, not by making assumptions of what people might want, but by actually asking them?
I think that's a great segue into the solution that you're working on right now.
Yeah.
So we talked about the problem and all the amazing things that you and Arts Commons doing. Can you talk a bit about the solution to bring people together and to solve that problem?
Well, so we think we've landed on a solution, and again, part of it is part of that humility in asking the question is knowing that I may not be right, but we're doing something together. But the solution to that is this this expansion that we're going through. So the single largest cultural infrastructure project in Canadian history is a $660 million project that we are actually in the throes of breaking ground on right now. But it includes the construction of a brand new facility across the street from us. It includes reimagining Olympic Plaza in downtown Calgary as a in a way that refreshes our legacy around the Olympics, but also reimagines a public gatherings place for Calgarians around arts and culture. And then the gut renovation of our facility, which is turning 40 years old and has some life cycle challenges, as well as, things that were designed 40 years ago. Some aspects of it were amazing. Other aspects of it we've evolved as a community, and so we're imagining almost 1 million square feet in our downtown core, indoor, outdoor venues of varying sizes for different art forms. And the reason I'm so excited is because we are building spaces and we are building environments within which Calgarians can experience things as defined by them. I think to myself, no one person should ever be in control of 1 million square feet dedicated to cultural experiences. Much like right now, Arts Commons, when anybody comes into the building, you might have an experience with the Calgary Philharmonic Orchestra, you might have an experience with Theatre Calgary, you might have an experience with the High Performance Rodeo. None of those organizations do work that I tell them to do. They define their own success, they define their own metrics, and they get to benefit from the environments that we create and that we care for. So the idea, and we're at capacity, right? This thing was built for a city that was a third of our size. And so when I think about the need for people to come together, and I think about the lack of spaces that people can come together safely, I imagine this is such a gift to future generations to say, we are going to be building state-of-the-art facilities that are flexible, that can be pushed in different directions. The technology that's going to be featured in some of these throughout these venues is state of the art, but that is a secondary role to the fact that anybody should be able to come into these venues, and whether they buy a ticket, whether they're doing it for free, whether they come by themselves or with their family, that you can have a cultural experience as defined by you in a place where culture is celebrated across the board. And we did it 40 years ago, as defined by the Calgary of 1985, and we're doing it again now. And I think, Calgary is breaking so many records, and Calgary it feels like the spotlight is on us as a city, to be able to open, the BMO Center expansion, to be able to open, the downtown public library, which is such a beacon of hope for community building, to think about the National Music Center, to think about the Glenbow Museum, to think about the office to residential conversion. Calgary's making some very big moves for its future, and I love that we get to be a part of it.
That's wonderful. And you also mentioned something about, cost and price and being able to have indoor and outdoor space. I think sometimes there's a perception that arts is expensive.
Yeah.
And, if you didn't have an upbringing in it or friends or been involved in it before,
Yeah.
It might be perceived as, a bit of a roadblock
Yeah.
to get in. So can you talk a bit about how with inflationary times and challenging times for families' purse strings, how they can get involved and partake in this amazing transition that you're going through right now?
So I talk about 3 barriers to participating in arts and culture that I'm aware of. I'm sure there are many more. The first one is geographic, right? And I think everybody, that's why public transportation is so important. That's why technology is so important. Sometimes it's just difficult to get downtown. So, we are overcoming a lot of that in terms of our digital presence online. How do we get to amplify the work of local artists beyond our 4 walls and beyond Calgary? The second one is a financial barrier. And what you will find across most organizations is a desire to get those barriers down. Glenbow just announced free admission in perpetuity. Theatre Calgary has a $44 ticket price for some of the best seats in the house. So you're seeing all these organizations trying to address those challenges. But the reality is it's expensive to produce these works of art. It's expensive to maintain. So one of the things that we are thinking a lot about is our sustainability, not just in terms of our facilities, but also economic. So, when we think about the variety of opportunities that people have to engage, having a cultural experience where you might pay, I don't know, a couple $100s to see the Rolling Stones perform in an arena is no different in terms of cultural experience than walking down Stephen Avenue and sitting and listening to a busker perform. And by providing the variety of experiences, we provide variety of entry points. The other thing that's really important to us is creating a variety of business. I talk about having a portfolio approach to programming. Even today at Arts Commons, you might have a commercial, like you might have a Live Nation show, and then you might have an educational show, and both of them have different price points. And sometimes we engage in commercial activities so that we can generate a margin, so that margin can then subsidize our desire to invest in community. And so what this larger campus will allow us to do is to lean into commercial activity where it's warranted and where the market is telling us that we can engage commercially, but then and because we're a nonprofit and because we're a charity, we get to take that surplus and reinvest it back into the community by providing free or below market value access to things. One of the things that I am very excited about is that not only will we create opportunities for people to come to Arts Commons, where 50%, so right now we welcome around 700,000 people a year. And
that's a lot of people.
Which is a lot of people.
That's amazing.
And we're at capacity, right? And Calgary continues to grow. But of that number right now, a third of them are entering our building and engaging in cultural experiences for free. Whether that's students, whether that's seniors, and not many people know about that. Having a larger campus with a greater diversity of programming and a greater diversity of economic activities, we're actually able to push that number from 30% closer to 50 and above by being able to generate commercial success where we can and make sure that we're offsetting the price of free admission with that. The other thing that I'm really excited about, and this is, you mentioned big announcements. Earlier this year, the province of Alberta announced an incredible $103 million investment into this project, which is historic. And the reason I think we were so successful in partnering with the provincial government is because we were able to demonstrate to them that by them investing in this new business model, our annual dependency on government funding will decrease 25% year over year. So even as a nonprofit charity, we are looking at social enterprise as a business model to wrap our brains around so that we can become more self-sustainable and engage a wider variety of supporters, whether it's private or public. And so, yes, this is the largest in Canadian history, but the other thing I'm very proud of is that we will become the most sustainable arts center in Canada.
And that's so important. Like, I love how you talked about the economic sustainability in terms of helping people, society, as well as doing good by doing good. You have an organization, a business to run.
Yeah. And just because we're a not-for-profit doesn't mean we can run a business poorly, right? It just means that whatever surpluses we generate, instead of calling them profits, we have a responsibility to invest them back into the mission. And I think historically we have seen the arts as being overly dependent on taxpayer money. And I am very grateful for every dollar that comes our way through all orders of government. But I think we have a responsibility to take that investment that they are making in us and being able to leverage a business model that I can go back to the city of Calgary or the province of Alberta or the government of Canada and say, here's the ROI on the money that you have given us. Whether it's financial ROI, whether it's social ROI, if we cannot measure the impact and the value that we bring, whether it's financial or social, then what's the point?
Absolutely. I think it's a big piece with what you're doing and really what I think any business should be doing is where is the value? Yeah. Where is the value? And we talked about that earlier on in this conversation, the value proposition, redefining that.
And the value not as, I can't be the one defining it,
to the audience.
Yeah. So I can't go to investors or to governments and pat myself on the back and say, look at what a great job I'm doing. The value we bring to community needs to be defined by others. And so why aren't we building community around that conversation? And again, the more we think of ourselves as a civic organization and a place where people can gather in and around arts and culture, then the closer we become to being in service to others and measuring our success by that.
I love that. And as we're talking about this specific component and kind of sustainability and costs and access to about a third for free right now and increasing that to almost to 50%, if someone's watching and they want to get involved, whether it be from a free perspective or a paid perspective or a outdoor perspective or indoor perspective, how can they learn more about how they can get engaged and involved? Or if they had feedback for you and said, you love asking questions, I have some thoughts.
I love that. So artscommons.ca is our website. You can go there for information on the project. You can go there for information on the 2,000 events we host every year. You can go there for information on how to volunteer, learn about the resident companies that call Arts Commons home, learn about our education work. You can also go to my website, alexsarian.com. I just wrote a book about all of this. And so this is my way of not having the answers, but posing the questions a little more publicly and trying to figure out, okay, how can we learn from each other and how can we learn about the questions that we ask? And so any advice, any feedback, whether it's to Arts Commons as an institution and as a civic partner of the city of Calgary, or whether it's to me as an individual and a Calgarian trying to make a difference, all feedback is welcome.
That's fantastic, Alex.
Thank you.
And you mentioned your book, and you quickly skidded by that. Tell us about your book. What is it called?
So the book is called The Audacity of Relevance, Critical Conversations on the Future of Arts and Culture. And, the reason, and I say this because, and you're watching me stutter because my belief in my heart of hearts is that I have no business writing a book. I've never seen myself as an author. But one of the things that became very clear to me as we were working on Arts Commons transformation is that what people will likely see in the news or the media are the renderings of the buildings, right? They're going to see the physical things we're going to be building. What many people aren't actually privy to are the conversations we're having behind the scenes. The conversations of what is the future of people-centered design? What is the future of artistic programming? What is the future of fundraising? What is the future of reconciliation? And so we're having all of these conversations behind the scenes as part of the project. And to me, as exciting as the renderings are, and don't get me wrong, if you've seen them, they're stunning and they're going to transform the built environment of our city. But
I'm so excited for this.
It's amazing. But as beautiful as they are, to me, what's more meaningful and more impactful are all the conversations we're having behind the scenes about how we want to rethink our business. And so this book, The Audacity of Relevance, is my way of sharing with readers some of the conversations we've been having, some of the questions I have been asking of community, and hopefully they will be inspired to do the same. Again, not having the answers, but figuring out, okay, if I can ask the right question in front of the right person, will the answer set me on a new path? Again, that will result in a beautiful new building, but the transformation I keep on talking about isn't physical, it's philosophical. And if we can do that job right, then whatever we build will be the physical manifestation of who we're becoming, and who we're becoming, that to me is the best. That to me is the best conversation to be having.
Well said.
Thank you.
And where can people find your book?
Anywhere books are sold, starting October 1, anywhere around Calgary, Canada, North America, or the world.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
It sounds like you've been extremely busy on multiple fronts these last few years.
It's been very exciting for sure.
Now, for the audience that's watching that, this is resonating with them and they might have some questions of their own, I'd always like to leave these kind of conversations on one, what's a question that the audience can or should maybe ask themselves related to this?
I would challenge and invite viewers to, you all know you celebrate arts and culture. You all know that there is a background in your lives or your family's heritage. And I would invite you and challenge you to find organizations like Arts Commons or other arts organizations that may be within your neighborhood or city and approach them and say to them, if you are a home where culture is celebrated, how can you imagine celebrating mine? Because we have a responsibility, and some of us are asking the question, but for those that maybe aren't, being able to engage in a conversation and know that there is no wrong answer to that, and that we have a responsibility as a sector to celebrate your definition of culture means that we want to learn from you. So I would invite everybody to not feel shy, to not feel like your definition of culture is not worthy, but rather celebrate it, be loud, be proud about it, and invite us into that process because we want to celebrate it with you.
Amazing. That's very well said. And
Thank
the more
you.
we can learn from each other. The
Absolutely.
more questions
Yeah.
that people are asking, the more components that people are sharing of their
Yeah.
own thoughts and beliefs and what they want.
And the more we celebrate ourselves and our heritage and our culture and make room for others, then, because I feel like right now we're in this process of being quiet and shrinking and just trying not to be loud and trying not to be proud because we're scared of what might happen. And so arts and culture should be a place where that is welcome, where that is literally required. And so if we can celebrate different identities while making room for others, not only will that create the best cultural experience you can imagine, we're also going to be rebuilding community one step at a time.
Yeah, I can imagine that helps create empathy, understanding, connection, all those components that fundamentally I think many people, we talked about similarities before.
Yeah.
Many people want that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a great question. So if you're
Yeah.
if you're watching this, please
do.
Please
Yeah.
do. Anything else you'd like to share today with the audience?
No,
or myself?
thank you so much for having me and for hosting this conversation. Thank you for watching and for being open to our redefinition of arts and culture and our redefining of Arts Commons in downtown Calgary. And we look forward to welcoming you in one of the many, many thousands of events that we host every year.
I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait to go.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you so much, Alex. Appreciate you sharing your story and solution with us today. Well, this wraps up this episode of Unstoppable Journeys, discussing solutions to problems to help make your journey unstoppable. Thank you for joining, and have a great day.